We are Travis and Adele Graham with The Noble Marriage, and we wanted to share with you a story from brokenness to restoration in our marriage.
We had the privilege of being interviewed by Focus on the Family, and we are so excited to share this interview with you. Our prayer is that through watching our story, that you hear something new for yourself and that you get healing and restoration in your life and in your marriage. Welcome to our story. So today is our 16th anniversary, and we just are feeling very led to share our whole story. I know we shared our story back in like a month and a half, 2 months ago on YouTube, and it is our most watched video to this point. And we've gotten a lot of feedback about more interest in our story. And so we are going to create a series of our story to just really paint the picture of how God has worked in our marriage and really how a miracle happened.
So in this portion of the video, it starts when I joined the military and I was 18 years old. But there's a past prior to that that's full of pain and hurt in my life. You know, I was introduced to pornography at a young age. I was sexually molested at a young age. I had a lot of trauma and things go on in my life. You know, at 16, I was dropped out of high school and was married and already had a child. If you can imagine the world of a 16-year-old child, it was just really tough. It was really tough for me to do that as a child. You know, one of the reasons we are talking about our story is because you may be able to relate to some parts of our story. You may be able to relate to some of the pain we went through, or some of the choices we made, or the consequences that we both have had in our life through our choices. You may be able to relate to those and be able to get something out of it. That's the reason we're going back into our past and diving through and talking about all the things we've gone through in our life so that you can get healing too.
Our hope is that you find hope through our story, that you find healing for yourself and really what is possible for you.
My selfishness, that it was about me. I wanted to be happy. I wanted to have joy, and I didn't know how to do it. And so the way that I looked for happiness was outside of myself. I looked for happiness in people. I looked for happiness in things. I looked for happiness in money. I looked for happiness in cars and accolades. Like, I remember when I joined the military, I needed to have the best, whatever the awards were there, I went after them, and I got them. And then when I went into law enforcement, every award they had, every accolade, I went after them and I got them. I needed validation as a man, and I did not know where to get that validation. And so it came from outside of me, and each time it still left me depleted. I would get that award, I would get that accolade, and I'd be like, oh, maybe there's something else that would be better. What's a better award? What's a better accolade? So it became like my identity was wrapped up in what I did, not who I was. Mm-hmm. And that's probably one of the biggest disconnects that I had, not only in my boys, but in how I treated all of my family, all my friends. I didn't even have close friends. You would say they're acquaintances, because it was more of a transactional thing. What can I get from them? You know, how can they support me? All of it self-centered. I would say my selfishness really impacted, you know, when I went into marriage with Adele, my selfishness really impacted our lives, because once again, I did not have love for me, so I could not effectively show you love. Mm-hmm. And it had such an impact that I chose to still be addicted to lust and pornography, and eventually, after in our marriage, I was unfaithful on Adele. Still another way of me looking for ways to satisfy myself and be happy outside of God, and to look for ways to satisfy myself. So I would just be absolutely destructive, and it's not like I didn't know those things were wrong. However, I was looking for ways to please me or be happy in some way. Good point. I've experienced depression a good bit of my life, and started medication several years before I met Adele to try to regulate my depression. And it was soon after I got into law enforcement, I started experiencing some really traumatic events and things I did not know how to work through, and did not know that I could go talk to people about it and be able to get help for myself. And because I didn't know that, I turned to alcohol. And I never drank alcohol, but I started drinking a little bit, and it would help. I thought it was helping to numb that pain that I had. And then I needed more. It was my very first day on the job in law enforcement. I came into work, and my very first call was a death. And I went there, and it was a 15-year-old boy that had committed suicide and shot himself in the head. And I worked this scene, and it was just so difficult to process, and to be with his mom and dad and younger brother during this whole scene. And when I got done, man, I was just devastated. I did not know what to do with all these emotions. Because I was still young. I was probably 22 years old. I didn't know how to deal with that kind of thing. And so what I learned is my supervisors were making jokes about it, making light of it. And I was like, oh, this is what you do, is you make jokes about it. You don't really talk about it. You just kind of sweep it under the rug and make jokes about it. And it eases it up. And so that's what I did. And I just experienced thing after thing after thing. And I was like, man, I still don't know what to do with all this stuff. It's like building up in me. Mm-hmm. And so I drank. And I ended up becoming a functional alcoholic, where I would drink 10 to 12 liquor drinks a night. Mm-hmm. And still be able to function and be able to go to work. But I needed that to be able to sleep, because the nightmares that I had was just horrible. And I didn't want to have them anymore. And I didn't know how to escape it. And I didn't know who to turn to. So it led me into more depression. And then eventually, a year after we got married, I experienced a really traumatic death in the line of duty that had such a huge impact on me, because I was blamed for killing a man. And I was civilly sued for killing a man for 7 years in a row. And they would serve me the papers on his death date every year. And that had a big toll on me. It ended up being a racial thing, to where it said it was racially motivated. And so a very prominent figure in our nation came and announced on national TV that I killed him. And so they were protesting me and holding signs and burning flags. And they ended up coming by our house, and they shot at our house that we lived in, because we lived only half a mile from where this guy lived. And so I had to hide my family, and it just had a huge impact on me, where I ended up getting severe PTSD. Mm-hmm. And anxiety and panic attacks all the time. And that had an impact on our marriage and on our family as well.
We didn't have a good foundation to know, like, what is healthy in life and in marriage. And so, like, hearing all of those things now, like, I know that those things are not healthy for our lifestyle. But then we were kind of in survival so much that we were taking it day by day. And there were so many things going on that we, like, normalized in our life. And so it was so, like, traumatic all the time, it seemed like. And
yeah, always seemed like it was drama.
Yes.
In our life.
So in that video, I talk about the need for awards and accolades, and I needed approval from other people.
A lot of performance.
There was a whole lot of performance for me. I needed to go out and perform, because I needed somebody to say, hey, way to go. Attaboy. You're worth it. You're valuable. You are good. There's something good about you, because I didn't feel that way in myself. I didn't feel approved. I didn't feel that way. And so I kept searching for it. I wanted happiness so bad outside of me.
And do you relate to this? Is this your story of just looking for happiness somewhere out here?
It's elusive.
It's definitely our story.
It's elusive. I never could find happiness outside of me, and I looked in a lot of places. As you can hear in my story, I was looking in alcoholism, I was looking in women, I was looking in lust, I was looking in I was looking in cars and vehicles and possessions and awards and accolades. And you may be doing the same thing too.
It's such a ladder.
Oh, yeah.
It's a climbing ladder that never ends.
Yeah.
It never ends in satisfaction.
You never get to that golden carrot of happiness. Oh, now I'm fulfilled. Now I have everything that I need. Now that I got that thing, that award, that car, that boat, that woman. Nothing.
Success.
Nothing will ever fill a void. There is a void. There is a void, but there's nothing that anyone else can do to fill that void. I was talking about alcoholism and how I was searching for ways to fill myself up in that, in a way of like, I did not care for the pain that I was feeling, the trauma that I was feeling, and alcohol was just a way for me to escape, so I wouldn't have to feel those as intense as I was feeling. It numbed that down
Right.
a good bit.
Right. And what we don't mention in that portion of the video is I had a drinking problem also, because I didn't know how to connect with him. I didn't know how to deal with him. And so I was just drinking away the disconnection, drinking wine. Ended up being 1 glass a night, 3 glasses a night. And it's just a really slippery slope when we're looking to numb ourselves with something or someone to avoid the pain in our life.
Also, I mentioned in that video, love. You know, if I did not love myself, which I didn't love myself, how could I possibly love you the way that I'm supposed to, or love God the way I'm supposed to, or love anyone? I really had to get present to, I can't give something I do not have, and neither can you. I have to love me, love myself, before I can love you effectively, and before I can love God effectively, or others effectively.
Yeah, and I really think that comes through the rest of our story of forgiveness for myself. Because how can I love myself when I don't like who I am and the things that I've done?
Right.
So stay tuned for more in our story on how Travis works through forgiving himself. You know, we also mentioned that we did not have a firm foundation to stand on. We both were believers in God and we went to church, but we didn't have a firm foundation in our marriage. And that is something that we are so passionate about for couples now. Because had we had a firm foundation to stand on, the traumas that came into our life, we would have been able to handle. Because we know now we have a foundation. So when the enemy throws something at us or something happens in life that's unexpected and disappointing or hurtful, we know how to walk through that, not only individually, but together as a couple because of that firm foundation. And so if you are a couple watching this and you don't have a firm foundation, no matter what season of life you are in, maybe you've been married 40 years. Maybe you've been married 5 years. It doesn't matter. I think sometimes we enter into marriage thinking we'll figure it out as we go, but life happens. And that firm foundation is so important. And that's what our transformational course is all about for couples. It's to build that firm foundation so that they have all the tools that they need in order to handle whatever life throws at us. So, so important and so needed in our culture today.
So Adele, you're talking about the firm foundation of life, and it reminds me of Matthew 7:24 through 27. Whoever hears these teachings of mine and obeys them is like a wise man who built his house on rock. It rained hard and the floods came and the winds blew and beat against that house, but it did not fall because it was built on rock. Whoever hears these teachings of mine and does not obey them is like a foolish man who built his house on the sand. It rained hard, the floods came and the winds blew and beat against that house, and it fell with a loud crash.
So that verse really points to the importance of having that firm foundation in your marriage, which is having Christ as our rock, as our foundation, so that no matter what life throws at us, we have that firm foundation that we're standing on. But even taking it a layer deeper, there's marriage tools that we need to build on top of that rock so that it is a really solid, firm foundation.
So you're talking about a firm foundation in marriage, and going back to the story of me, there was a brokenness, there was a hole in me that I wanted to fill in a bunch of different ways. And all of them were destructive, because none of them had to do with Christ as a foundation for me. That wasn't what I was looking for. I was looking for other ways outside of me to make me whole and complete, or to make me happy, or to fill me in some way. And I was never able to find it outside of Christ as my firm foundation. That's actually how I learned how to love, is I really leaned into, I needed to love myself first so that I could love God and love others. And it came from me knowing just how much God loves me in order for me to be able to love myself.
Thank you so much for joining us today in this portion of our story. And be sure and join us next week as we get deeper into more of our story. We'll see you then.